So you've just gotten promoted, you're leading your first team, and you're excited, maybe even a little bit terrified. But let's face it, a lot could go wrong in the first few months, but a lot could go right, especially if you've got good coaching and mentoring. And that's why I'm here. I'm Julianne Sinek, founder and CEO of the Leader Channel, and I want to help you get your first 90 days right on target. So let's get started. One of the things that's really important to remember are first impressions. I know you and I both think, well, I want to be counted for what's on the inside, or I want my track record to speak for itself. But listen, the tough news is that that's not always how it works. People actually are forming first impressions of you within the first few seconds of every interaction that they have with you. So it's going to be really important in your first few days that you set the right impression. Here's some things that I want to share with you. One of the first things that you could do is get out on a listening tour. Now, if you have a smaller organization, this could be a little bit more straightforward because maybe you're only navigating the floors of a building. But if you have a, let's say, multinational organization, or if you're just located geographically dispersed in multiple states, it could be a little bit more complicated, but not impossible. The bottom line is that you're going to need to get out and talk to, first of all, your team. Talk to your team, get to know them. You should know them by name. You should know what their role is. You should get to understand more about how they're going to play a role in your vision. So start there, start with the team. You're going to probably quickly pick up on who are the individuals that are going to be able to quickly contribute to your vision, and maybe where are some of the areas that you want to follow up with a little bit later. But start with your team. Secondly, you're going to want to start with either your peer group or the leadership ranks. Now, this depends on your role. If you're stepping into a role, let's say supervisory, manager level, you're not going to want to go too high up in terms of talking with leadership. It could be natural. If you run into a senior leader in the hallway or you're talking with them in a meeting, follow up with that. That's fine. But what I'm talking about is making sure that you cover all your bases at your peer level. These are going to be other individuals that maybe are in different cross-functional teams at your same level. And it's okay, again, if you happen to talk to other leaders and you get to know them as well. But be careful not to sell yourself. You're there to listen. You're there to ask questions. More than likely, what got you promoted is your reputation, is the fact that you're a strong individual contributor, or maybe you've been a strong manager at a first level, at a supervisory level. More than likely, that's what got you promoted in the first place. So you don't have to do any selling. What you need to do is take the posture of listening, because most of what you're going to be doing in this leadership role is different than what you were doing as an individual contributor. So again, talk to those peer group leaders as well as maybe the next level leadership in a natural way. Get to know them, get to learn more about their teams, begin to form a picture of how your area connects to what they're doing. All right. Third person you're going to want to speak to and make sure that you're meeting with frequently is, of course, your leader. So it's going to be really important to sit down with your leader, your boss. Make sure that you understand his or her vision. Make sure that you are aligned with that vision. They're likely the person that promoted you in the first place. So again, you're not selling. What you're doing at this point is listening. You're asking questions, maybe even sharing some initial thoughts and ideas, but you want to make sure that you're talking with them and that you're aligned with their overall vision. And then that fourth group that you're going to want to talk to on this listening tour is a group of stakeholders. So if you don't have that identified, this is a good time to start identifying who are your stakeholders. What is a stakeholder? A stakeholder, of course, is someone who's got a stake in your business, someone who's going to have a vested interest in what you do, uh, going successfully. Maybe you're an internal, maybe you service them as an internal customer. Whatever it might be, these are individuals that have an interest in making sure that what you do and what your team does delivers. So get out and talk to those stakeholders, identify them, meet with them very early on. All right, so listening tour is done. Second thing you're going to want to do is identify some quick wins. Now, I want to just share something a little bit different here because we've all been taught go for the low hanging fruit, and that's a good thing. You can do that. In fact, encourage you to do that. But one of the things that I want you to consider as well is look for a strategic quick win. What do I mean by that? You're going to want to look for something that is low to mid risk, but has high reward. One of the roles that I've served along the way was in an executive leadership role, and I came into this organization and I was told pretty early on, you're not going to be able to make a lot of change. You're probably not even going to be able to talk to other directors. And I was at a VP level role. So I thought that was a little bit strange, but that was the culture in this organization. But I did exactly what I'm sharing with you. I went out on that listening tour. I started talking to people. I started talking to my boss, my leader. I started getting to get a pretty quick picture of what was really going on and where the pain points are. And so, one of the areas that, I took a risk on, it was a risk, but it was a low to moderate risk for me, anyways. And one of the things that I did was identified that as a strategic quick win, meaning if my team could deliver on this particular initiative that no one thought was possible, that no one was even looking for, but that I knew would have a meaningful impact on the organization, that it would be a quick win. And so we went for it, we did it, and we were successful. So look for those opportunities that are going to have low to moderate risk, but also deliver with a high impact. So that's what I mean by a strategic quick win. All right, so we talked about the listening tour. We talked about strategic quick wins. Now let's talk about the third thing you're going to want to do. And the third thing you're going to want to do in this new leadership role is build your team's infrastructure. Now, this is one of the most overlooked areas for new leaders because you're thinking, okay, I'm coming in, I'm just going to either do what the previous person did, or maybe, just kind of follow the flow. This is your opportune time to make sure that if workflows are ineffective, that you're addressing it early on. How do you know if a workflow is ineffective? Well, you've already gone on that listening tour, you've already talked to stakeholders, you've already talked to some of your peer leaders, and of course, you've been talking with your leader. So you've probably already identified where the areas that need to be addressed, where those areas are. So start looking to build your team's infrastructure. You can do this through several things. One of the areas that I like to start off with early on is setting up my meeting infrastructure. I don't really want to get bogged down with a lot of meetings, but I don't see it as just meeting for meeting's sake. I see it as an information exchange. I'm learning, I'm hearing what's important to my team members, I'm helping them solve problems because they're going to be, working their particular area, and I want them to be successful because that makes our entire group successful. So I want to look at first my meeting infrastructure. Nothing too complicated, setting up that team meeting. If it's an operations meeting, and it depends on your industry, some like to do daily huddles or daily stand-ups. Others, you might be able to do it at a weekly cadence. You will know based on your industry as well as your organization's culture. If you're in a kind of standard flow where you don't have things that are happening in terms of daily outputs, like in manufacturing or in healthcare or something like that, then a weekly cadence might work. Otherwise, you might do daily stand-ups, but keep them brief, keep them short. People need to get on with their work. It's not about the meeting, it's about solving problems. So set up that meeting infrastructure. Second thing you're going to want to do in terms of your building your team's infrastructure is start to think about the strategic vision that you have. Now, at this point, you probably are already shaping your vision. It totally depends on your organization's culture and your boss's expectations of you. Now, if they've communicated to you, hey, I want to see your vision in a couple of weeks, or I want to see your strategy in the first week or in the first few days, then you're going to want to make sure that you're giving them an early version of that, but let them know, hey, I'm doing this listening tour, I'm doing some other things where I want to find out what's really going on. So this is just an iterative version. Why do I say that? Because pretty soon you're going to need to put budget behind it. Now, depending on the level that you're in your leadership role, this might be something that's already covered by the person that you report to, by your leader. But if you're probably at a director level, maybe even at a senior manager level, you are likely and probably should be managing your own budget. So you're going to want to come up with that early on. And there are rules and there are just little idiosyncrasies that every organization is going to have around budget. So after you've talked with your leader, I recommend getting in touch with your organization's comptroller or whoever the person would be appropriately for you to speak to about your team's budget. You're going to want to know how often you can get those reports so that you can monitor and manage spending, as well as understanding small things like, account codes. How do I charge against something? These are really important. One of the things that I like to encourage the leaders that I coach and I work with is to become smart early and savvy early on your financial management. If this is not your strength, let it quickly become a strength, because this is an area that you can not only quickly contribute in your leadership, especially if your boss recognizes that you are someone who is managing well, not just people, but also finances. It's going to work well for you. It's going to work in your favor. So make sure that you get in touch with that comptroller and identify what your budget is and manage that and manage it well. And if you find that you're going to run into trouble, make sure that you raise flags early. All right. So we talked about meetings, we talked about budgets. Some other things that you can do might be thinking about the approval process. So how do approvals get done, whether that's budget related or other decisions? So make sure that you've got that covered. Make sure that you've also got enough space for your team. Make sure that you're identifying based on that vision and strategy, what am I actually going to need? What is it that I'm going to expect from my team? Maybe they've been asking to work remotely and that's not something that's been done before. Well, you're starting to talk to your employees now, so you'll get an idea of who can you start to rotate in maybe on a remote work day, based on your organization's culture and all of that. But start thinking about those things, about infrastructure, so that you have things in place to operate effectively and efficiently in your team. So those are just a few tips when it comes to building your infrastructure. Now let's talk about the fourth area. One of the things that I really want to make sure that you're doing in these first few months in your new leadership role is building relationships. So this is different than that listening tour that we talked about earlier. Building relationships is across the board, across the company. It's even external to your organization. Talk to people, get to know them, actually pour into them, care about them as a human being, care about them in terms of their work role, get to learn more about what they do. I love doing this at any organization that I've worked with in the past, whether it was consulting or one that I was employed by. Why? There's no faster way to get to know your company and the business than getting to know it through its people. processes as well, but people. So talk to people and get to know them. By building relationships, you're not only creating a network of individuals that maybe they'll ask for something from you at some point, but you might also be able to reach out to them and ask their opinion on something. This has helped me in so many ways throughout the years. And so I highly recommend it. Build relationships and don't just build them in your particular function. If you're in operations area, don't just build them in that area. If you're in a functional area like finance or legal or HR or marketing, don't just build them in your functional area. You've got to get out and you've got to meet with people from across the company. One of the things that I like to do, and I especially did this earlier in my career, is I scheduled Friday lunches with. So on my calendar, it would just say Friday lunch with. And I started this on Friday because in most of the organizations that I was employed by throughout the years, it worked better that way. People were really busy throughout the week. I started in management consulting. It was really hard to pull away from clients and client sites. But on Fridays, everybody was back at headquarters and it was a little bit easier to meet with your colleagues and get to know people. So I scheduled lunch with. Now, this was an opportunity that I could also not just meet with individuals at my peer level, but also with those who were in leadership in the organization when I wasn't yet a senior leader. And it was a wonderful opportunity for me to not only have mentored people who could mentor me in my role, but I could learn from them, or I could ask them questions, or they might take an interest and just ask, "So, what are you working on?" And I could share with them, and they would give me advice. So keep your Fridays filled up. And even if you're not that social, let me challenge you. I'm not that social either. I may seem like I'm an extrovert, but I draw my energy from actually just, reading and having a quiet night at home. It can be a stretch if you're not naturally social or not someone who's naturally energized by being around other people. But let me just encourage you and challenge you. Try it at least once a month. And here's something you can do. Because I think I know what you're thinking right now. You're thinking, what am I going to talk about? And how am I going to carry a conversation for an entire hour or more over lunch? And what if, and what if, and what if? Listen, stop with the what ifs. One of the things you have to realize is that number one, nobody, and I mean nobody, is perfect. So if you can let go of that, ideal that I have to be perfect and I have to be the one that carries the conversation, you can let yourself off the hook a bit. It's not about you. Most important thing that you can bring into that conversation is your natural curiosity about the other person. I like to share this with the leaders that I'm coaching, especially if they're going into a social type of setting, like a banquet or some sort of reception where, everybody's floating around the room and having conversation. And if you're not that social, or if you tend to be more shy, or even if it's so bad that you feel like you get anxious in those environments, I want to share something with you. If you pivot your thinking around that moment, that interaction, start with this. Start with thinking, you know what? I'm going to go into this room. I'm going to spend, I'm giving you the example for the reception. I'll come back to the lunch in a minute. But I'm going to go into this reception. There might be a couple hundred people in there. I don't know any of them. But guess what? Most of them, when they came in here, they didn't know anybody either. And I'm going to spend no more than 30 minutes. That gives you an out, like there's a beginning, a middle, and an end. You're not going to feel like you're trapped in this space with people you don't know and probably don't want to be around. Just think about it as I'm going to be in here for about 30 minutes. I'm going to find a person who I think might be the most interesting person in the room. You don't know who that is, but you just go with the person who looks the most open and friendly. I look for a group that might be open, meaning if I'm looking at them, they're kind of in a semicircle, or maybe it's just two people, but they're sitting with an open posture. I don't go to the group that's closed or that's having a really intense conversation. So look for the person or group that might be somewhat open. I just did this a few months ago. I went to a conference. I didn't know anyone who was going to be at this networking event. And I walked up to the first group that I thought, they look pretty friendly. And guess what? They were. And they were incredibly inviting. And we had a great conversation. And we even had a nice follow up through email. So I really want to encourage you, don't worry and stop putting pressure on yourself to perform. It's not about you. You don't have to be the one performing if you take an interest in the other. So start with at least one simple question. Get to know the person. So tell me a little bit about yourself. Or is this your first time here at this particular event? And by the time you ask the first question and they answer, listen to their answer. And there might be something you can take to do a follow-up question. And conversations are kind of like a tennis match. It's a volley, it's a back and forth. Someone asks you a question, you answer, then you ask a question. So the pressure is not always on you, but at least try that and get started. Now, back to the luncheon. So, in the luncheon, if you're meeting with, let's say, a leader in your organization, maybe you're a director and you're going to meet with a vice president, or maybe you're a manager and you want to meet with another director in another group that you've started to build a rapport with. One of the first things that you might ask if you're meeting with someone at a higher level than where you currently sit in the organization is ask them about their journey. Ask them not only how they came to the company, but how they got to where they are. They will love to share with you more about themselves. And I think you'll be able to take the conversation there from there. And more than likely, they're going to pick it up as well. They're not going to let you be the one who has to carry the conversation. If you're meeting with a peer, you can do something similar. You can simply say, so where were you before this organization? Tell me more about that. Have you always been doing that? How do you like this now? I mean, there's any number of questions you can come up with. And you don't want to be like a reporter where you're just peppering them with questions. Let it be natural. Remember, you're doing it to take an interest in the person. So again, building relationships is critical in your first few months in your new leadership role. So let's recap right here. What are you going to do? What are you going to do in those first few months in this new leadership role? What's going to help you be successful? Number one, get out there on that listening tour. Talk to your team, talk to your boss, talk to peers, find out what's really going on behind the scenes to help you develop your vision and your strategy. Speaking of strategy, number two, come up with strategic quick wins. Again, think about low to mid risk, but high reward, high impact to the organization. Number three, build your team's infrastructure. Don't just take everything as it came. Make sure that your infrastructure is serving the now needs of your team and your organization. And then four, build relationships. Focus on building relationships across the company at every level, not just because you want to build your network, but because you want to pour into people and get to know them. I hope this has been helpful. Please share with me comments. I'd love to hear from you. I'd love to hear what's on your mind, what topics you'd love for me to cover. But I hope that you excel in your first 90 days in your new leadership role. Thanks so much for watching.